Before the war began, Europe stood restless, shaped by crisis, uncertainty, and rising political extremism.
New racial laws stripped Jewish citizens of rights, redefining identity through ancestry and state decree.
Beginning in 1941, deportation trains transported Jewish families toward camps across occupied Europe.
The Holocaust began not with camps, but with laws, ideology, and the systematic dismantling of civil rights after Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany on 30 January 1933. The regime, led by the Nazi Party, moved swiftly to consolidate power, dismantling democratic institutions and establishing a one-party dictatorship. Central to Nazi ideology was racial anti-Semitism, rooted in conspiracy theories and pseudo-scientific racism that falsely portrayed Jews as a biological threat to the German nation. In April 1933, a nationwide boycott targeted Jewish businesses, followed by the Law for the Restoration of the Professional Civil Service, which removed Jews from government positions. Over the next 2 years, Jews were excluded from legal, medical, educational, and cultural professions, effectively erasing their participation in public life. The codification of racial discrimination intensified with the passage of the Nuremberg Laws in September 1935, which stripped Jews of German citizenship and prohibited marriage or sexual relations between Jews and non-Jewish Germans. These laws institutionalized racial definitions based on ancestry rather than religious practice, redefining identity according to Nazi racial criteria. Propaganda, directed by Joseph Goebbels, saturated newspapers, radio broadcasts, films, and school curricula, normalizing exclusion and fostering social acceptance of discrimination. Jewish property was increasingly Aryanized, meaning transferred under coercion to non-Jewish ownership. Violence escalated dramatically during Kristallnacht on 9th to 10th November 1938, when synagogues were burned, Jewish businesses destroyed, cemeteries desecrated, and approximately 30,000 Jewish men arrested and sent to concentration camps, such as Dachau concentration camp. The pogrom marked a transition from legal discrimination to open, state-coordinated violence. By 1939, roughly half of Germany's Jewish population had emigrated, though many countries restricted immigration, limiting avenues of escape. Scholars at institutions such as the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum and Yad Vashem document that these early measures were not yet a policy of systematic mass murder, but constituted a deliberate process of exclusion, dispossession, and dehumanization that laid the administrative and ideological foundation for the genocide that would unfold during World War II. The outbreak of World War II on September 1, 1939, marked by Germany's invasion of Poland, transformed anti-Jewish policy into a far more radical and expansive system of segregation and control. With millions of Jews now under German occupation, Nazi authorities, under the direction of agencies including the SS and the Reich Main Security Office, initiated a policy of forced concentration into designated urban districts known as ghettos. Beginning in late 1939 and accelerating through 1940, Jews were expelled from homes and compelled to relocate into overcrowded, sealed neighborhoods. The largest of these, the Warsaw Ghetto, established in October 1940, confined more than 400,000 Jews within a walled area of approximately 3.4 square kilometers. Conditions were characterized by extreme overcrowding, inadequate sanitation, insufficient heating, and deliberate rationing policies that allocated starvation-level food supplies. German records and post-war scholarship document that tens of thousands perished in ghettos from hunger, disease, and exposure before deportations to killing centers began. Nazi authorities imposed Jewish councils, or Judenrate, to administer daily affairs under coercion, while German police and auxiliary forces enforced curfews and labor requirements. Ghettos functioned both as instruments of isolation and as reservoirs of forced labor for the German war economy. In June 1941, following Germany's invasion of the Soviet Union, mobile killing units known as Einsatzgruppen began mass shootings of Jewish men, women, and children across Eastern Europe, marking a significant escalation in violence. By late 1941, Nazi leadership moved toward a coordinated plan for systematic mass murder. The policy, later referred to as the final solution to the Jewish question, was formalized during the Wannsee Conference in January 1942, where senior officials outlined administrative coordination for deportations to extermination sites. Deportations from ghettos intensified, with victims transported in sealed freight trains under brutal conditions to camps including Treblinka and Auschwitz-Birkenau. Documentation preserved by institutions such as the United States Holocaust Museum and Yad Vashem demonstrates that the ghetto system was not a temporary wartime expedient, but an essential transitional phase in the progression from persecution and segregation to industrialized genocide.
By 1942, Nazi policy had evolved into a coordinated program of systematic mass murder carried out across a network of concentration and extermination camps established primarily in occupied Poland. Under the authority of the SS and senior officials, including Heinrich Himmler, deportations from ghettos throughout Europe intensified following the administrative coordination outlined at the Wannsee Conference. Camps served distinct but sometimes overlapping functions: concentration camps for imprisonment and forced labor, and extermination camps designed primarily for killing. The largest complex, Auschwitz-Birkenau, combined both purposes. Upon arrival, deportees underwent selection. Those deemed unfit for labor, including most children, the elderly, and many women, were sent directly to gas chambers. Zyklon B, a cyanide-based pesticide, was used to kill victims in enclosed facilities constructed to facilitate rapid disposal of bodies in crematoria. Other extermination sites, including Treblinka, Sobibor, and Belzec, operated under Operation Reinhard and were designed almost exclusively for immediate extermination. The vast majority of those deported there were killed within hours of arrival. In addition to Jews, victims included Roma and Sinti, Soviet prisoners of war, disabled individuals targeted under the so-called euthanasia program, Polish intellectuals, political dissidents, and others classified by the regime as racially or politically undesirable. Prisoners selected for labor endured starvation rations, overcrowded barracks, disease, physical abuse, and exhausting work details that supported German industry and military production. Mortality rates were high even among registered laborers due to malnutrition, epidemics, and violence. Mass shootings by Einsatzgruppen continued in Eastern Europe, resulting in the deaths of over 1 million Jews, particularly in territories of the occupied Soviet Union. Documentation from post-war trials, captured German records, and survivor testimonies preserved by the United States Holocaust Museum and Yad Vashem confirm that these killings were systematic, bureaucratically organized, and implemented across multiple agencies of the Nazi state. By 1944, as deportations extended to Hungary and other remaining Jewish communities under German control, the machinery of extermination had resulted in the murder of approximately 6 million Jews, representing 2/3 of Europe's pre-war Jewish population, constituting one of the most thoroughly documented genocides in modern history. By late 1944 and early 1945, as Allied forces advanced from both west and east, the Nazi camp system began to collapse. In July 1944, Soviet forces liberated Majdanek concentration camp, revealing substantial physical evidence of mass murder. On 27 January 1945, the Red Army entered Auschwitz-Birkenau, discovering thousands of emaciated survivors and vast quantities of confiscated personal belongings. In April 1945, British forces liberated Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, while American troops liberated camps including Buchenwald concentration camp and Dachau concentration camp. As German authorities retreated, they forced tens of thousands of prisoners on death marches under brutal winter conditions in an attempt to prevent their liberation and to conceal evidence of crimes. Many perished from exhaustion, exposure, and execution. The liberation of the camps exposed the full scale of systematic atrocities to the international community through photographs, film footage, military reports, and survivor testimony. Following Germany's surrender in May 1945, Allied authorities initiated legal proceedings to prosecute leading officials of the Nazi regime. The International Military Tribunal convened during the Nuremberg trials between 1945 and 1946, charging major war criminals with crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity, establishing legal precedents that continue to shape international law. Subsequent trials in occupied Germany and other countries addressed additional perpetrators. Displaced persons camps housed survivors who had lost families, homes, and communities. Many later emigrated to countries including the United States and the newly established State of Israel in 1948. Institutions such as the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C., and Yad Vashem in Jerusalem preserve archival records, artifacts, and testimonies to support ongoing research and education. Scholarly consensus based on extensive documentary evidence, demographic studies, perpetrator records, and survivor accounts confirms that approximately 6 million Jews were murdered between 1941 and 1945, alongside millions of other victims targeted by Nazi racial and political policies. The Holocaust remains a central case study in genocide, state-sponsored persecution, and the consequences of extremist ideology, underscoring the continuing responsibility of historical documentation, legal accountability, and public education in preventing future atrocities.